So I think probably we'll just kick off with me as a background theme, as they say, and get ourselves underway. So I think everybody's coming in as we're speaking, and I want to officially welcome everybody and say good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, which is covering the topic of AI in the recruitment industry. My name's Julie Foad. I'm Sales Director for UK, EMA and APAC for IMS Group, most specifically our IMS People Possible brand that's completely dedicated to supporting recruitment businesses with outsourced recruitment services across the globe. IMS Group companies also provide marketing, payroll and accounting, data management and tech services to our recruitment partners. And overall, we're currently working with around 260 recruitment businesses. So we get to know what keeps them, or namely you guys, awake at night. The webinar covers a common sleep depriving topic, and as our objectives illustrate, it's our intention to equip you with knowledge that will help you to navigate, harness and develop AI strategies for your own businesses. Before I introduce our lovely panelists to you, a couple of keynotes for the webinar itself. If you've got any questions, pop them in the chat. My colleague Kruti will be manning the chat box and she'll ensure your questions are answered. If we run out of time, any questions unanswered at the point of closing the webinar will be responded to and sent out to you with a recording of the event around about a week from now. So without further ado, I'm very excited to announce and introduce today's panelists to you. We have two recruitment business leaders. The first, I'm going to start with ladies, is Rhona Driggs, and who was appointed as Chief Executive Officer of Global Staffing Group Empresaria in June 2019. She has over 30 years of experience. You're not that old, I know, 20 years experience. Working in international companies within the staffing sector, and has proven record of delivering growth and driving innovation. For the last 7 consecutive years, Rhona has been recognised as one of the Staffing Industry Analysts Global Power 150, a list of the most influential women in staffing, and is also acknowledged as one of Europe's top 100 most influential leaders in staffing. Welcome and thank you for joining us at such an early hour, Rhona, because I know it's early hours of the morning in the US there, where you're calling in from. Our second recruitment expert is Tim Cook. Tim joined Engage Talent as Group CEO in February 13. He leads the boards of each company to deliver high profit growth targets through clear and progressive strategies. Under Tim's leadership, Engage has implemented forward-thinking digital and tech-enabled solutions to drive value, customer engagement and process efficiencies in its shared service platform. Outsourcing, which includes MSP, RPO and statement of work, has grown to comprise more than 25% of Engage's business. Prior to Engage, Tim was Global Head of Digital and Business Innovation at Hays, responsible for digital activities in 32 countries. So I think you'll agree he knows a little bit about the digital space. He has also been named as one of Europe's top 100 most influential leaders in staffing. So welcome to our two panelists who are the experts in recruitment. Our recruitment experts are joined by Daniel Callahan of Veermark. Daniel is an AI expert in the recruitment industry with a passion for innovation. He's a driving force behind cutting-edge solutions that streamline hiring processes and boost efficiency. Leveraging Veermark's AI-powered tools, he brings data-driven precision to candidate screening and background verification. Can't say that, I've got to get my teeth in today. His vision extends to creating an unbiased and inclusive hiring landscape, and he generously imparts his insights, empowering HR professionals with the latest AI technology advancements. Yes, I had to read that because there was a lot of information there, but I hope everybody can see that we've got an amazing panel for you here today. And I'm really pleased to hand over to our moderator, my colleague Lucy, who'll be making sure your questions are answered and keeping our fabulous panel on track. Over to you, Lucy.
Thank you, Julie, and welcome to all our panelists. I'm looking forward to a lively and insightful session today, and welcome to all of those who have joined us. As Julie did mention, please put your questions in the chat as we go along, and we'll try to answer as many of those as possible. To get things started, I thought perhaps we would hand over to Daniel as our AI expert, just to give us a brief introduction to AI. I mean, what it really is, why we're seeing such rapid growth in AI popularity in 2023, and how you and the team at Verimark are using AI in your solutions. Over to you, Daniel.
All right. Well, look, thank you very much, Julianne, for the introduction. Very generous with the adjectives and very much welcome. Delighted to be here with you all today. So, as mentioned, my name's Daniel. I'm CEO of Verimark. But I'll answer Lucy's 3 questions directly, starting with what is artificial intelligence. Well, artificial intelligence is a term that is frequently really applied to computer systems when they are being programmed to have the same inherent intellectual processes and characteristics as humans. That is to say, the ability to reason, the ability to interpret, to learn from the past, to create, and to decide. The final word of that sentence being independently. And that's where we are now seeing really the cusp or the next step of AI development really starting to take its hold. So if we go back through almost the chronology of AI from the great fakes of a traditional mechanical Turk, where you go back to a Byzantine market and actually have someone, a small person inside the suit of a robot to fake what a robotic machine could look like, to going back to having warehouses full in emerging markets of people processing the data behind a veneered screen, to what we were starting to see in the early 2015s and such in the recruitment industry, where we were seeing a real burst in automation. Right? Now, automation should not be confused with AI. It is more logic and workflows and so forth. But it is the next 2 steps of AI that we're now starting to really see, and I think can be quite pivotal in the world of recruitment. The first and lesser step is where we're starting to see augmented intelligence. And that is really where the ability for programs will be able to adjust decision-making still based on human input. And they will continue to learn from those additional decisions and criteria added and imposed, or the final decisions taken by any human in that process. So think, again, in our context, a recruiter, yes, knowing on various CVs, and the machine being able to learn the types of profiles that are more relevant based on your negative or positive responses. To think of a more casual answer, think about Tinder, where you swipe left and swipe right, and all of a sudden you start to get better looking responses, or more blondes than brunettes. The final stage, really, or the stage that really gets people very excited, is actually where you start to talk about automated intelligence. And this, again, where it comes back to that very important word of essentially being independent, right? When can a machine start to train and process that data? When does the machine start to say, yes, that candidate goes through to the next round. Yes, that candidate does X, Y, or Z. Yes, we follow these subsequent actions. And it's that stage now that really we've started to see a real spurt in applications and implications for not only obviously the recruitment, but the broader world of work. If we think about why, towards Lucy's second question, why has this really kicked off in 2023? Well, as I said, it's been around for years. Right? It's not new technological perspective. The real boom to the industry has actually come from more the consumer awareness of it. Right? So the fanfare is less around the technological advancement, but rather the release and the relaunch of more consumer applications like ChatGPT, right, which is OpenAI, or generative content tools like Midway or Midjourney as well, which are creating fantastic pieces of works of art from just pure written instruction. Now, there obviously has been development, in technology process. We've all seen, or many people have seen, the chips double in value or triple in value, with the likes of NVIDIA becoming very prized for their computing powers, and now the ability to power these large language learning modules. But really, it's the widespread mainstream use of these tools that has got people and the news and the media so very excited. For us as a business, whilst not adjacent to the recruitment business, Verimark is a global pre-employment screening background company, much like IMS. We serve hundreds of recruitment companies. We do background checks in 150 markets and 40+ checks in every country. The ability to run that data analysis at a much faster level to process the checks faster so you can make your placements faster is obviously pivotal to do everything that we do. And therefore, we'll use it throughout our entire business and service flow. So doing candidate IDs and digital photo recognitions to automate criminal checks, being able to screen global databases and compliance platforms to identify any global sanctions checks, right? Again, in this sort of war charge times, making sure that people aren't politically connected or such is pretty important. The ability to cross-reference our own entire database and make sure that we've already checked this person so that you don't then need to check them again and eliminate any repetitive or wasted or inefficiency or extra cost in running those checks. Now, from our process operations, it's sort of pervasive throughout. And then if we look at sort of, again, just the more broader business operations, everything from sales outbound, appointment setting, our ability to customize outbound content to our clients, or the ability to provide a 24/7 candidate service hotline and experience are all now AI driven, and all ultimately help us improve the SG&A lines of our business, and are all it draws very strong parallels to a recruitment company's P&L. So really delighted to dig into some of these themes with you all today, and I'm sure Tim and Rona both have a lot to share on the subject as well.
Perfect. Thanks, Daniel. And I think we'll just carry it straight on in that thread and just look at some of the current uses of AI in the recruitment process, a little bit more detail than perhaps Daniel's given us there. Tim, I think I'll start with you, because when we were having a discussion yesterday, you mentioned that there's quite different uses for the different models of recruitment. Perhaps you want to kind of talk us through those and where you see those uses.
Yeah, sure. I think at the start, this is still quite early doors for most of us, right? In when we're talking about the use of AI. I think, when you talk about Verimark as an example, the techie guys have been doing this for a long time, and that kind of consumerization of AI is kind of scary, right, for all of us. I think one of the challenges that you have to take on as a business leader or running your own business is, what are the use cases? And I think getting quite specific about that is an important first step in trying to understand it. I get asked all the time, am I going to be replaced by an AI, right? And I say, no, but you will be replaced by someone that knows how to use AI, right? So I think it's incumbent on all of us actually to just try to understand what it is. People talk about large language modules, prediction engines, etc. It's all mumbo jumbo to most of us, right? So really, where does it come down to a use case? So very simply, let's give you a very one that we use now regularly. We get job feeds coming in from many directions, think, MSP or vendor management platforms. We now take those jobs, give it to our AI, right? The AI then creates a brilliant job description for us and posts it straight onto the internet for us. So we're now taking many thousands of jobs, creating fun, real English language modules where we're actually taking that now and putting it straight through. I used to have a team of people offshore that were effectively curating those sort of things that were really difficult to do, really hard to do, and really hard to make sound good. And actually, that's given us an ability to just do that in a nano. I think we also need to understand the risk of this. And I think we've already talked about a little bit about automation, RPA, robotic process automation versus AI. And I think the challenge for all of us really is, and the risk, I think, in our sector is that because we can automate and do it all the time, should we, is a real question. And I'm getting pretty bored of the auto marketing that I get through my emails, my WhatsApp, and it's just dull, right? And I think the risk for us is we're all going to get this great thing going on, and all it's going to do is just sort of quadruple, 10x, order of magnitude, more communications going backwards and forwards, to the point that the white noise will actually be coming out of it will just kind of turn everything off. So I think one of the other use cases around this is, how do we use artificial intelligence to actually curate what is going on? How do we use it to segment our businesses? How do we understand the proclivity to spend? So all of you guys, if you're running recruitment business, will have many thousands of customers in your database. The reality of it is most of them will never talk to you or use you, right? You will find that your business is actually relatively skinny underneath. Most of your Pareto reigns, right? 80% of your business will come from 20% of your customers for sure, right? And that won't change ever. Right. The question is, which 20%? So here's a really interesting example. We have a doctor recruitment business, and we reckon it's about 13 to 15% of the doctors that we put into our compliance funnel actually get deployed to revenue. The trouble is, we don't know which 13 or 15% of those 100 doctors, or 13, 15 from 100 that we are actually going to use, right? So now we're starting to use AI to look at that data and start to tell us the likelihood of us placing somebody of this nature versus this nature. And you kind of get to the, we always place these people, therefore we should work really hard on them. We never place these people, we should just ignore them entirely. So I think there's a way of taking data, and don't confuse, you know, AI and data. Just giving an AI access to anything is not interesting. It's got to be running over data that you can do something with. So again, I think it's early days. I don't think we know the answer. I don't think we know where this is going to go.
No.
My last one, I think it's already been mentioned, you know, we as an industry work 9 to 5 and have an hour for lunch and don't work Saturdays and Sundays as a rule, right? You know, that was like a bank was about 20 years ago. It wasn't helpful. You had to take time out of your work to go and cash a check, right? Banks are now, you know, you do it yourself, you're self-serving. When we look at the data behind this, 72% of my candidates approach us or apply to us outside of working hours. And we're not very good at dealing with it, honestly. So actually to be able to create a kind of chat position that can hold it, right, and can curate that inbound traffic, and then to potentially hand it off to a human handoff is quite interesting. I think it's pretty easy to get quite grumpy with AI when you're chatting to it at the moment, because I still think it's quite in its infancy. And I think, you know, you doing it, talking to chatbots is not okay, right? It's just not cool. But talking to a chatbot to curate the position where you get it down to a level where now I'm going to book you an appointment to talk to somebody about your specific needs, I think is fundamental to what we've got to do as an industry. So answer for me really simply is, I think it will be good and it will be bad. And I think we've got to, as an industry, work out where's it going to be good and where's it going to be bad. Is it going to replace us? Almost certainly not. And I think the challenge there is it will just become white noise very quickly. And I think, you know, human beings interact with human beings. I don't think that's changed. I also think that we have different use cases in terms of our business. If you're running a direct hire or a perm recruitment business, the processes you operate are very, very different than if you were running a shift nursing business, for example. I think the AI and the shift and the ultra high frequencies, I call it, work. I think that's more likely to happen. And we're seeing that with people like AI and the big platform plays that are coming out. I think that will be augmented very well with AI. I think some of the permanent direct hire stuff, actually a lot of it won't work and it won't play very well. So again, I think of volumes, think of curating data. But if I leave, you know, my always start point is, what does your data tell you, right? Don't care what you think, but understand your data first. That's my view in a nutshell. Go on, Rona, take me on.
No, I'm not going to debate anything because I wholeheartedly agree. And of course, I absolutely love your quote. So I told you the other day I'm going to steal it for future use, but I absolutely love that. You know, a couple of things. I think, Lucy, you were going to ask me a little bit about what is the US seeing, or am I seeing anything different in the US market? So, you know, obviously the US is the leading AI development country, right? And it's interesting because I've been looking at some data recently that 77% of consumers prefer to interact with humans, right? Still in the US. So this was a US-based survey. 66% of Americans would not want to apply for a job if they knew AI was going to be an instrumental part of the hiring process. So I think as long AI has been around a long time in the US, we've got some of the leading companies here with Facebook and Google and Microsoft, but the US still hasn't really embraced AI the way they should. Now, 10, 12 years ago, you know, the US started using, in my former life, we used chatbots. And that did make a difference to a degree because we were getting higher touch because we would actually have to, you know, the chatbot would respond and then kick it over. But it's all about what we do with it. And I think, you know, Tim's point about data and looking at the data, you know, I think it's, we already have so much data and we have to figure out a better way to look at the effectiveness of how we're using AI and what it's really gaining us from a value proposition. And I tend to think of it as much for the recruiters as I do for the clients and the candidates. What value are we bringing there? And I know we'll talk about that a little bit later, but you know, how do we make sure, and I think part of the you know, going back to the US point, I don't think there's been enough training and education on how to use it properly. And I don't think there's been, you know, and in particular in our industry, you know, there's a lot of tools. I mean, you look at some of the front office systems like Bullhorn and some of the other ones that leverage AI and in a lot of what they do, of course, the searching and the matching and some of the onboarding and all of those things. But at the end of the day, you know, it is how we use it, and as important, the data quality that's going into the system in the first place, right? So I would just think, you know, with in summary, you know, I think the AI in the US, as despite being one of the top markets for it, is still not at a point where they're embracing it or adapting it completely. For various reasons.
You've got to love the Americans, haven't you? Honestly, they know they sit there. We're the champion. We're the head of AI. They still pay me in checks in the post, right? In America, so don't feel that you're ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's interesting.
No, I was just going to say, Tim, we've actually had a very specific question come in for you, just asking what tech is used for the rewrite of ads and posting. Is that something you've developed yourself, or is it something?
No, we use chat, and we use ChatGPT. It's very straightforward. It's very simple, right? I mean, you've got Bard, you've got others. You know, I think. To take it on a little bit, you know, I think the knowledge around this stuff. This is how we think now, and this is how I would encourage everybody to think, right? I think I probably use chat or Bard every day, right? You know, I used to ask it questions, and I was asked a question by the bank the other day. He said, "Hey, Tim, would you help us? We've been asked, what does banking look like in 20 years' time, right?" And so as we were chatting on the phone, I typed the question into chat, and then I just sent the answer over to him, and it was just brilliant. So, you know, it's a great source of data. It's a great source of information. But again, I think you've just got to be honest with yourself, right? That if you don't know how to use it and you don't know what it is, right, you are going to be replaced by someone who does. And I come back to that point every time. So I think, is it a panacea? Is it going to solve everything for us? I don't know. What I would disagree with Rona on, honestly, and I do believe this, right, is that actually, I think all of the recruitment industry is in thrall to tools and assets trying to make the recruitment consultant more productive. So think Bullhorn, right? Think LinkedIn, right?
Yeah.
My whole view of this is that that's wrong. And what actually we need to start thinking about is a democratization of the process and putting the power into the consumer's hands, right? So the interesting thing about AI in the States, the nurse platform, is that actually the control is now moving to the candidate, not the recruiter. If you think about banks, right? I don't want to talk to a bank ever, right? Until I do want to talk to a bank, and then I want to talk to it immediately, and I expect them to talk to me, right? So, you know, I don't want to go into it, see a teller. I don't want to go and see a, you know, where it is. The idea of just having to deal with a bank just fills me with horror. And I think if we're really honest, particularly in the more transactional elements of our sector, right? Actually, they don't want to talk to recruitment consultants either. And I think the industry needs to get its head around this idea that actually the democratization, consumerization of our product, our value proposition, is going to be the big change. And I think that's where the AI will start to play really seriously into it, in the curation of those transactional flows. You know, if you really think your recruiters are that great that they're going to add huge value to the conversation, then maybe you've got better recruiters than I've got, right? But actually, I think we do a great job, best we can. But most people, and when you look at adjacent industries, you actually see the point that most people want to do it themselves. So your survey, Rona, right? I hear you, I get it, right? I think they don't know, right? And they're using it in their kind of own concept. And this is a legacy problem for us, right? Technology is easy, adoption is hard. And if I told you how many tools I've built, created, and tried to give my consultants to get them to use it, and they all just sit in Outlook and LinkedIn all day still, right? You know, there's the problem. And I think adoption is the one thing we've got to get our head around, and it won't come from the management, it won't come from us, it will come from the consumer at the end of the day.
I completely agree.
Just to expand on Tim's the answer or the question posed to Tim there. So there on just job adders alone, the interesting thing where AI is increasingly being used on job posts is now, so from a diversity perspective or diversity and inclusion perspective. So you will obviously get a a natural job ad, a job ad that will be written for any profession. Right? There will be words in there that are naturally geared towards generating more male applicants, right? Unintentionally and so forth. And then you can run these through programs. Diversity.io is a really good one, spelled as it sounds, where then it will be able to tailor the job ad to help you find people of more different ethnographic or demographic groups. And it will suggest use this word instead of that word, because that will give, or these collection of words, or add this policy or this statement into it, because it will increase your female applicant, or it will increase your, BAME applicant quota, or whatever sort of ethnicity you want. And they are, increasingly popular and certainly widely available, and a useful add-on, if you will, just to getting ChatGPT to automate the process. And then equally, as sort of touched on that, one thing that we saw in sort of past lives of very large recruitment companies as well. I think it's a complete foolish idea or fool's errand for any recruitment company to try and build their own AI tools. You're not technology company, right? And there's a plethora of choices out there of very well backed companies who are spending hundreds of millions of dollars investing in the AI tool so you can use it, rather than the part-time side project that you're going to turn it into and think you're going to crack the world on it. So it is not so much about the complication around how we use it or learn how to use it, because those things will become very simple. But really, again, I think there's what's the business case of using it in the point solution or the overarching platform of solutions that you choose to do it from, that really makes a difference in how a company can succeed with AI or not.
Thanks, Daniel. I'm going to continue with some of the questions that are coming in on the chat, actually, because they're coming in thick and fast. And we do want to answer our audience's questions. So we've had one that comes in that says, as recruitment consulting firms start using AI platforms into our processes, so too do candidates, because they've got the same access to the same platforms for related role. And can they actually be using these AI platforms to pass screening and testing programs? And will that actually have a bit of an impact on cultural fit within organizations if they're able to kind of progress along without really talking to people? I just wanted to get your thoughts on that, because it is a subject I've seen come up a few times over the last few days. And Rhona, Tim, maybe you want to start with that one?
I'll let Tim start.
I mean, you're talking about AI dealing with AI, right? If you answer that question correctly, which means that's quite an interesting result. I'm going to chuck a pebble in your pond, I guess, around this one. But if you run the same questions over the same data, you get the same response, right? And that's an interesting position. So think of a Boolean search string that you type into Google. If you run that over your database, you get exactly the same 3 candidates coming out the top of it every single time.
All the time. Every time.
And I think that's kind of interesting risk point. So, are they going to, I don't know how to answer the question, but is it going to help them? Who cares, right? If it helps them, great, right? And if it improves diversity, fantastic, right? I don't think as a recruitment industry, we've ever cared about diversity. We're interested in getting a placement, right? So to us, whatever diversity you may have in that, we would like it to be as broad as possible. Our best job description should be, breathing and awake, because we can fill that job every time. The harder you make it, the less we like it, right? So, I don't, as an industry, there's unconscious bias, of course, for people, but actually as an industry, why would we not be diverse would be my starting point always. So anything that can help that and anything that could make the broader spectrum better should be considered and should be used. I don't know, Rowdy, you got a different view on it?
No, I don't have a different view on it. I absolutely think that we need that technology we need to leverage that technology to do the things it's intended to do. And yeah, I don't have anything else to add to it, Tim. I think I think it's so new and so there's so many things that we don't know yet. And will it help? I think I agree with you a little bit. It's who cares, right? If it helps, it helps, and if it doesn't. But I think the point is, I go back to this whole adoption point, because it is critical that we start to really embrace and we have the same challenges. We're putting on a new technology everywhere right now. We're deploying it, and the adoption is the biggest pain point. The technology is easy, and we have to start trying new things, doing new things differently, and really using the tools so we can get better at understanding. And then backing that up to data. We need data to say, to tell us whether or not there are things that are more effective for us to be spending our time on or leveraging AI for versus not. And are we actually improving the productivity of our recruiters? Are we actually getting CVs faster to our clients? All of those things are, I think, yet to be determined or backed up by any data, unless, Dan, you've seen anything to the contrary on increasing effectiveness.
Well, certainly on an increasing effectiveness, but we have started to see increasing levels of candidate fraud.
Yeah.
So on the other side, right? So now you're getting certainly if you're asking your candidates to do psychometric tests or rather, sort of a GMAT style, intelligence tests, they'll use ChatGPT to answer the questions. And so now they'll have ChatGPT when they're doing the job, but they're getting through those first hurdles quite quickly by getting those questions answered. We very much have a partnership with Tech Serve Alliance, which is a big IT and contracting association in the States. They have a real problem now with their candidates actually, certainly in a remote context, using bots to do the interview. So you think you're hiring one person, they're actually presenting an avatar of a completely different person. They can and getting the answers generated as well for that, which then helps them. They think get a bit of a chance. So you have no real, again, you're more in the deep tech space, or certainly in the crypto sort of space, but you have no real sense of who you're hiring or if it is the real person that you're hiring and so forth. And that, I think, as these videos and tools get better, will in parts of the world become ever more prevalent for sure.
Thanks. And I might stay in a similar vein of that one, and just we've had a question come in and just really talk about how are we training chatbots to prevent biases within the recruitment process. And I think we had quite an interesting discussion on this yesterday as well. So I don't know if perhaps you want to talk a little bit about how some of the things that have come up from a bias perspective.
I think the famous example is the Amazon right? And this was designed for Amazon by Amazon, and ultimately the working population at Amazon skews towards a sort of a white middle class, Ivy School educated set of heuristics, right? So the data set that was being fed into it obviously then sort of magnified the outcome and showed it to be biased in how it recruited, because ultimately the underlying data set was not equal in its initial combination of candidates and profiles within those. So they had a fair and true and clean data set as well. I mean, it's clearly a massive issue for a lot of people. And going back to what we were talking about in New York, or in America rather, in New York, actually just a week or so ago, they've now passed a law that says if you are building or using a AI matching algorithm in your recruitment process, I think it's local 144 is the name of the law itself, then you have to declare it, and it has to be also vetted as well. So that will certainly kick up a lot of IP protection laws and questions around that, because you look at companies like Gem or so have raised hundreds of millions of dollars building these algorithms, and any internal company who's built these algorithms as a source of competitive disadvantage now having to have it examined will surely fight that. But the intent is very good, and I think as data sets are becoming more widely available or created, then you hopefully again start to and the ability to test for bias becomes more commonplace. Then hopefully we'll see that become a lesser problem.
Let's take that point and develop it a little bit, because what we've seen, we know that Google released a sort of an AI sort of avatar onto the internet to sort of post and comment and stuff, and within about 10 minutes it had turned into a total racist, misogynistic lunatic, and they had to turn it off, right? Because it's feeding on the data that is on the internet, and honestly, it's not pretty, most of that data, for sure. So I think the risks that we should talk about here are actually, will it end up making those problems polarized? Will it get worse rather
Right.
than better? And I think is the example that you just used, Daniel, there, the Amazon gig, for sure, right? If it's running off of that data set, of course it's going to get worse. And what does that feed? It gets worse and worse and worse, and in the end ends up being utterly unhelpful and unuseful. But I think there's other risks, and I'm conscious that we're talking, I hope, to some recruitment people and recruitment consultants. I think there's other risks that we need to think about from a business point of view. I would ask you to look at yourself in the mirror and actually look at your transactional volumes, right? So let's take a perm recruitment consultant. How many people are you actually placing every year per recruiter? I know the answer to that in my businesses, right? And it's not pretty, right?
It's not pretty.
Right. I'm going to say, as just for backpack it, right? We're going to place one person a month, right? Give or take, right? It won't be miles off of that. Trust me. It won't be.
Is that like the standard thing? I mean,
look, I've signed 100 IMs, right, to look at buying recruitment businesses in the last 5 years. And the statistics are terribly similar across everybody, right? Unfortunately, that's the case. So accepting shift is different. I'll try frequency is different. But if you take direct hire or permanent recruitment as an example, you're looking to place a person a month, right? And you'll be kind of okay with that, right? Now, why then are we dealing with 10,000 candidates, right? Why are we dealing with huge amounts of data? Why are we dealing with this huge databases? And I come back to the point, I have got recruitment consultants that download 1,000 CVs from some horrid CV or job board somewhere every month. And when I look at the data, it's the same 1,000 CVs that they downloaded last month, right? Oh, by the way, 70% were already on the CRM, which they never look at, by the way, because they don't. So these are real world problems around trying to get adoption, trying to get productivity. And again, I would like us to start thinking about using AI to actually curate that, actually get us to a point where we spend most of our time doing something that might turn into something, as opposed to spending most of our time doing stuff that doesn't add any value over time. And people don't get me when I talk about this. I talk about it all the time. Turn it upside down. Stop thinking about it as a macro. Here's a whole industry. Here's a million things we could do and done. How about turn it around the other way and say, you need to place a person this month. What's the fastest way of doing that? Right? And how can AI help us in that? So again, the risks for me here is all we're doing is we're just going to put more data into the system, more noise, more white noise, more chaff, less wheat. And I think we need to be thinking about it as a business is how do we use this stuff to give us some interesting data that heads us in the right direction? That's what will make us more productive, right? Not giving us access to another 10,000 candidates. Now, globalization.
Yeah, it's quality versus quantity, right, Tim?
For sure.
I mean, I for sure. And I agree. And if we have a struggle with people not using the data at all, the database at all, and going out and doing a new search every time. And it's like, those are the things that we need to fix in the industry. And if AI can help us do that better, I think, I would love to see, and Tim, that statistic you quoted about one placement per month on average on the perm side is absolutely, I've talked to two main competitors in the UK who are saying the same thing. We all have the same number, which is, first time I heard this from you today, I'm getting the sense, but I'm not comfortable with that number, right? I want that to 1.5. I want that to 2. How do we get there? And what are the things that we can do to make our recruiters work smarter, help our recruiters work smarter, and leverage the tools that they have today in front of them?
Well, I'm very old, right? So I've been doing this for 35 years. I started recruiting in 1987, which is probably before most people on this call were born, right? And I can tell you that the average placements per head for a recruiter in 1987 was, in my business, was 6.5, and the record was 22. Yes. Right?
Yes.
So here we are, and we didn't have computers, we didn't have fax machines back in those days, by the way. Nothing. So why were we 6 times more productive then than we are today? Right? And again, let's talk about this in context of AI. These are the questions that we should be asking, right? This is the curation. It's about the reason, by the way, is that we only had Rolodexes, right? If you had a candidate, you had to place them because you didn't have any others, right? And by the way, they were talking to another 1,000 recruitment agencies, right? So, again, I think when you take this out of the recruitment consultant environment and put it into, let's take legal recruitment. My daughter's a lawyer and she was applying to become a lawyer. what an utterly ridiculous scenario that is, right? You've got grad rec, right, sitting there in all these big American, UK, white shoe and magic circle firms, right? Every candidate is applying to 40 law firms, right? The only assumption you can take from that is that they have got a 1 in 40 chance, right, of hiring her. Now, whether she's good, bad, or a different question. I obviously think she's brilliant, but the efficiency of that is that there's all the law firms, everybody's applying to everybody. The efficiency of the model is very poor. And I think, how can we then start to use data and AI to make that the proclivity to hire, the proclivity to want to work there? That for me is where the secret bullet lies. And to your point, Rona, I don't even close to that yet at the moment. I think it's going to make it worse before it gets better. And I think it's going to take some unusual people, the difficult people, actually to start asking us really difficult questions, which is what's going to protect the industry. Well, people talk about, we saw off the job boards, we saw off this, we saw off the CRMs, we saw off LinkedIn, we're still here, we're still doing our job, right? Well, yeah, actually that's true, right? But the estate agents were supposed to get rid of by Rightmove, or whatever it's going to be called in whatever country you're in, the platform. But actually, when you look underneath it, it's just all estate agents still doing the same thing, right? So how do we ask the difficult questions is where I want to get to with AI, and how can I use that to help me, rather than how can I use AI to do more stuff that doesn't make any money?
Yeah, completely agree.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Tim. And have we seen any good examples of really how people are measuring the effectiveness of AI? I don't know, Dan, if you want to plow in there, or Tim, over to you. It would be interesting to know.
In my previous role was working on digital innovation and investment arm of a Fortune 500 recruitment company, looking at how all the application for the various tools. Ultimately, the one metric that counts is revenue, right? So that number of placements per month is the ultimate scorecard for all other parts. But if you break down the service chain, just working out how many hours you can save from candidate interviewing or candidate interview schedule, actually doing the interviews or candidate scheduling, and therefore enable them more chance to go out and do business development, or new reps equally become the areas. And then if you can segment, the way that we looked at it there was to try and segment the KPIs of each component of the service, and then see which one could be affected or gain extra capacity out of to then put into the other ones. But that was 5 years. 5 years ago from now, so I'm sure Tim will have a more recent example.
Well, I haven't seen it yet. I honestly,
no, I haven't either.
There's nothing I can point at and go, this is brilliant. No. This is I've certainly got lots of nonsense going on, right? And I've certainly communicated with many more people. But is it turning into anything productive right here, right now? I can't tell you that it is. No. I think, again, to me, RPA is a really cool thing, right? And it's not AI, but again, it's worth thinking about in context of this. I think, and Dan, you called the distinction between the two. Actually, I think RPA is much more effective at the moment. And I think the ability to implement low code or no code RPA has fundamentally changed in the last 18 to 24 months, right? It used to be really difficult, and now it's really easy. So we use it all over the place. And I know use cases, we log into all the vendor management systems automatically now. We extract all the time automatically. We dedupe it automatically. We then insert that into our pay and bill systems automatically. And I had people doing that forever. Now, can we bolt a little bit of AI onto that? Will it make any difference? Will it help? That's an interesting point to me. But again, I think when you look at most of our recruitment industry, and I think it's fair to say, if I'm going to speak for the UK, then there's 40,000 recruitment agents in the UK, right? 95% of them have got less than 10 people, right? So actually, are they going to be using complicated RPAs? Probably not. They are going to be continuing in a relationship environment. And again, at an industry level, the big guys are going to get onto this. And are we going to see a flight to scale? And I think that consolidation model around actually these people can do it and these people can't. And I think what we all know is there can only be one, right? So if somebody gets this right, actually there will be a flight to scale quite quickly. That I think is an industry risk. But as yet, the answer to the question, I have not got a single experience where I can show you that it's turned into that one has become two, right? So, I can give you lots of data to say we're doing lots more stuff, but is it actually helping me? Honestly, right here, right now? No, I don't think so. And I think the risk business risk is that actually could make it worse.
Yes, I would agree with you, Tim, wholeheartedly. And I think, we don't have the data to support it. And we didn't at my previous company either. I mean, we would implement all these tools and we have all these things that are happening, but there's no way to truly measure it, whether they're helping or hurting us, quite frankly. And I think that needs to change at some point, and we need to start being able to measure the effectiveness so that we're not throwing so much more on the recruiters just to do the same one placement per month, right?
I've got a question for you, Dan, just because you're the techie and I'm the sort of recruiter. What do you think? If you look at that process and how we work, you work with recruiters and you work with TA teams, I'm sure. Where do you think the breakthrough will be, or the one thing will be that you will put your money on?
I don't think it will be so much of the service. I think actually it is to a point that you made, Neville. If you think about recruitment, it's sort of strated in its complexity and need for manual service. I think in the more commoditized section, actually you're going to see full automation very soon. And I think in baristas, coffee shops, truck drivers, not the placement of truck drivers, not the autonomous vehicles themselves, almost nurses and such, where a qualification is a qualification, it is a commodity, and people can swap in and out. I think that is very much on the. I think actually it is incredibly automated already, right? So there, it's not 1 is 6, it's now 1 to 200, right? From a placement point of view, if you look at some of those freelance marketplaces, or some of the hourly staffing platforms, and there's lots of examples where they've reached that level of scale and automation through AI matching and automated chatbots and placements and contracting and everything, going from a full end-to-end solution. I think in the more mid-market, it's that initial filtration stage, right? So is probably where you're going to get your biggest efficiency gains. I think cut 10 CVs you have to review down to 4, cut 4 interviews down to 2. Then then run a personalized, high touch client oriented service from there on, or candidate oriented service from there. But those are, I think, in its current format, the 2 big win areas, or 2 big industry segments that you're going to see AI rule. And I do mean rule. I mean, I think it will take over.
Dan, I think you're clearly smarter than me, right? Because I think that's right. I totally agree with you, right, in that context. And I think we are seeing that in that high frequency stuff for sure. And I think it's the management's job, and that's kind of Rona and I's problem, frankly, is to sit there and kind of work out how best we deal with that. But let's take an adjacency to this, which I think is a fun one to just think about. In your high frequency, you talked about coffee shops, baristas. If you're a cab driver, right, most of the cab drivers now have 4 or 5 apps on their phone, and they turn them on when they want work, and then they take whichever one's giving them the best money and is taking the least cut. So whether it's Lyft or whether it's Uber or whoever you're using, delivery drivers are doing the same, right? They've got their bicycle, they just turn it on in an area, they take their job. The fun thing for me is I think that they're doing that job, they do the delivery, and then they get paid for that delivery through their phone instantly, right? That's the sort of automation that I think is going to come into that high frequency. I'm a nurse, right? It's not up for you. I don't have to tell you when I'm available, right? I want to work when I want to work. And I think that democratization, which I come back to, is putting the power into the individual, is for sure that's going to change. And then, do you need AI to match? The answer is matching is, there's more money being spent on matching technology in Silicon Valley than any other subject. And it's a total waste of time, right? And interestingly, the more complicated the job, the easier the match is. You're either a Java developer or you're not, right? You're either a good one or a bad one, right? The matching's not complicated. Now, stick a geo on that and you're a Java. No, it actually doesn't matter where you work in the world. I can do this from anywhere. Matching is not the problem, right? It's about the currency, and it's about the availability of individuals and their ability to want to work for you, and the competency. So again, I'm back to the curation point. I don't know if you disagree with that, Rona, but.
No, I don't disagree at all. And I think that is absolutely an area. I mean, when we look at all of the freelance and the freelance workers, because we do a lot of freelance in our business, all of that has to be driven by app-based. And when you start to do that app-based, and I think it's Shift Gig and all of these other companies that are using this technology, I think they are getting that additional productivity because it is directed by the candidate and it's owned by the candidate. They feel more in control, they feel more empowered, and we probably, I don't know how we get there. How do we bridge that into the types of skills we're placing today, or will it ever, work that way? But I would say the same thing for IT contractors. IT contractors also want to kind of work when they want to work and do what they want to do. That would be a great place to start with that. Given the success I think we've already seen in using those types of platforms to really put the power in the candidate's hands or the employee's hands.
That's a great shout. Again, it's not stepping off the topic, I guess, but the other bit from a recruitment perspective we should think about is how does it change the jobs of the people that we're placing? So, I was chatting with the CEO of our IT business. I've got a developed software company in the company. And, we were chatting about building an interface between two systems. And I asked Chat to do it for me. I wasn't on GitHub at the time. And I just sent him a set of code that it had written for me whilst we were chatting on the phone. And he looked at it, he went, yeah, it's not great, but it's not bad, right? He said, and I think, that job, he said, I'm going to have to edit this, but it's kind of done most of the heavy lifting. And again, when you think about IT development, most of the stuff is being written by kind of platforms anyway these days. Nobody writes code, right? Nobody writes HTML, right? It's produced by the machine itself.
Right.
So I guess back to the point is, how do we help our candidates become adept at being able to use this stuff and help them? I think most of us are going to end up being editors at some point, right? Rather than, if you like, creators. So, if I create a bit of content now, I ask it to write me a press release, which I do, and that's fine. I have to edit it because it's not my tone of voice. If you ask it to write you an API interface, you have to edit it because it's not quite right. But I think that will over time become better and better. So I think there's a bigger threat to our candidates than there is to us right here, right now. That's how I see it anyway.
I agree. And I was thinking the same thing last night that, as much as we need to, work to get our internal teams and our internal recruiters using AI the way it needs to be used to help increase their productivity, I think at the same time, there's massive benefits to the candidate that we need to educate the candidate on, right? Even just prepping for interviews or getting, themselves prepping for interview questions or getting more prep and more detail about the company through uses of Chat GPT. I mean, there's things that we could help coach our candidates on to say, hey, go use this. It's not just a Google search anymore, right? It's more than that. And go use this because this will, if they're in that final interview stage, man, we should be all over that, and we should be encouraging that candidate to be going out and looking at those. These are the types of questions you're likely going to be asked, and this is what the company culture is. These are, and by the way, on culture, I think what I would love to see is getting better at matching. We do okay at matching, I think, in the industry, matching on skills. Where we fall short is the soft skills and making sure that these people are cultural fits for that company and that their past work behaviors, are the right ones for the company that we're placing them at. Because when you look at turnover data, and this has been historical, no matter what company I've been at, the majority of the time, there's some sort of lack of fit. It's not the skills or the abilities of the person, it's soft skills and the non-teachable ones, if you will, that are why a candidate is leaving an assignment. So that's what I would love to see, that soft skill assessment, because our recruiters aren't good at that, and I don't know if they'll ever be.
Yeah, I'm looking at the time, and we've got about 4 minutes left, and we have got lots and lots of unanswered questions. We have a lot about specific technology that form part of the recruitment process. So I think we might do a bit of a wash up of that as part of the kind of follow up of this of this webinar. But one question we did have that relates very much to the candidate side that you've just said, and actually came from Amit, who has joined us and will be closing us off tonight, our IMS CEO. But he did ask, whether there are any AI tools that help candidates choose between different job offers and companies that you know of.
Mhm.
So not directly, explicitly, compare this offer to another, but there are lots of tools now that are becoming increasingly available from a salary benchmarking point of view and a compensation point of view. So, and they're also becoming more regionalized as well. So in the States, you'll have one called Trove, which obviously gives you a much clearer view of what companies are offering, and from a salary data compensation. In Asia, there's one called Salary Benchmark. There's obviously everyone knows Glassdoor as well, which will give you some insight to it, but less so, as I say, on a direct comparison, but lots more insight from even accessible to candidates on what they should be prepping for, or what the market norms are, or the comparables would be in that are now increasingly commonplace.
Perfect. Thank you, Dan. And with that, I'm actually going to hand over to Amit, because I think we've got 2 minutes left, and I'll leave you to close out, Amit.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lucy. That has been an amazing, I think 58 odd minutes. So thank you so much, Rana, Tim, as well as Daniel. There's lots to actually take away. Some items which worked, certain banter, and I was still trying to follow as to where that is actually going to be leading. But I'm sure that our audiences have enjoyed the conversation today and would have learned from it. So thank you so much for sharing your time today and your views about AI in the industry. And I would also like to thank the audience as well for taking out the time and being on this session today. I know that there are a lot of questions out over there in the chat box, and we promise that we're going to be sending the recording of this webinar along with answering all of those questions. So that would be out to you shortly in a week's time. And in case you are keen to actually see such more topics come up, and us sponsoring such webinars and inviting interesting speakers, please mention it in the chat as to what subjects and topics might interest you. We'll definitely come back with some interesting webinar series for the same. So thank you once again to the panelists, and thank you, Lucy, for such an amazing coordination and helping us steer this conversation. Thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. Have fun.
Thank
Be
you.
good out
Thanks
there.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Safe trip back, everybody.